Okay, well, let's get into mailbag because this is something that, one, it kind of teases a little bit of basketball season, even though it's not like necessarily a basketball like point issue. Yeah. But so I don't know if anyone who's listening saw, but this week it was released. In fact, I think it was on Friday because when I got the alert, I texted it to you, B. Holmes, and was like, we're talking about this week on mailbag. And essentially the NCAA task force recommended removing minimum standardized test scores in an effort to advance racial equity. And just to kind of give you a quick synopsis of the article, or maybe just the intro to the article, it's on ESPN. If you want to just Google NCAA task force recommends, removing standardized test scores, or, NCAA standardized test scores, it'll probably be one of the first ones that pops up. But essentially, where are we at? The recommendation was made by the NCAA Standardized Test Score Task Force, which was formed as a part of the NCAA's 8-point plan to advance racial equity. The Division I Committee on Academics and Division II Academic Requirements Committee will consider the recommendation at their next scheduled meetings in February. Changes to initial eligibility requirements would also have to be reviewed and made through each division's legislative process. Now, the part of this conversation is not meant to be about what was recommended and what ends up happening and even diving deep into what this whole thing is. I don't know all the facts around it yet other than one article, so I don't want to sit here and try to speak on it in depth.
Right.
Here's what it triggered in my brain. I'm going to put this book up for anyone who is watching the recording of this. Okay, and if you're listening, I'm holding up a book called I Came as a Shadow by John Thompson. Okay, John Thompson is a legendary Georgetown coach. Passed away, I believe, last year.
I think it was last
year. And he's just an icon in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a big reason why colleges have sponsorship deals with major brand companies. You could go on and on about the guy, but there was a very famous protest or move that he made, protesting something that was called Proposition 42 back in the late 80s, may have been the 88, 89 season. And essentially what that proposition was, and I bring this book up because he has a whole chapter about it. And let me just say this before I get into that. I would strongly recommend anybody reading this book just for the perspective that it offers. Whether you're black or white, brown, whether you're Republican or Democrat, whatever your personal beliefs are, I think that this book could really challenge perspective, help perspective, and really, like, for me personally, just to say this honestly, like as a white male in America, reading this book written by a black man in America and just getting his perspective and his experience and like his life's journey, which is way different than mine, it was just really good for perspective. So I'm not going to get too much on the soapbox about that, but I just would encourage whatever. I mean, it's not something that's going to like, I just would highly recommend anyone to read the book. One, it's got some great sports stories in it. I mean, it talks about Allen Iverson, talks about Patrick Ewing, talks about his whole dealings with Rayful Edmond, who's a notorious, was a notorious drug kingpin up in Washington, D.C. I mean, just some fascinating stories. But then he also has some very like strong perspectives that I thought for me were just really cool to hear and read and learn, just as a person who's always trying to grow and become better in who I am. So anyways, with that being said, basically what Proposition 42 was, is it was going to replace Proposition, I think, 48, which it all comes back to some of the same stuff. And without reading the whole chapter or anything like that, just to kind of sum it up in a nutshell, it goes, man, you know what? I am going to read it because I don't want to. So it says Proposition Proposition 42 made it harder for poor kids, most of them black, to receive athletic scholarships. It roots back to the early 1980s when a University of Georgia professor said publicly that several football players in her classes were close to illiterate, but the school kept them eligible anyways. The outcry forced the NCAA to set a minimum standard for athletes to compete as a freshman, a 2.0 high school GPA or a 700 score on the SAT. Athletes who took the ACT needed a score of 15. Players who did not meet any of these benchmarks could still receive athletic scholarships, but would have to sit out of competition their first year of college until their grades reached a required level. The rule was called Proposition 48. I could live with that one, is what Thompson said. The University of Georgia made things worse when they fired the professor. She sued and got her job back, plus $1 million in damages. That placed Georgia and the rest of the SEC under the microscope. The SEC decided as a conference not to give scholarships to players without reaching those standards. Okay, so the SEC, the football powerhouse of the NCAA, I mean, it's not like this is just something new. They issued this rule essentially as damage control that they weren't going to allow athletes to even have scholarships. Not just what it was before, where you could still get your scholarship and come be a part of the program. And that's what John Thompson was notorious for. He would bring guys in. He would get them in a culture where they could thrive, where they could learn. He had a lady on his staff that was like an individual tutor, and he got them to where they needed to be academically, because his whole point was, I'm not just trying to prepare them for basketball, but I'm trying to prepare them for life beyond that. Yeah. So he was cool with that. As long as I could get him a scholarship, get him in the program, he knew his system that he had and other places in the country could get players where they needed to be. Well, now that the SEC made this rule that, well, we're not going to allow players to even have scholarships if they don't meet these minimum requirements. Well, guess what? Now the SEC is at a significant recruiting disadvantage. And so they raised enough noise with the NCAA, where the NCAA was going to issue Proposition 42, which was going to say, well, the entire landscape is going to follow this model that the SEC has put forth. Yeah. And it was kind of a big deal where, and if read the book, or if you could even YouTube it, it's like a very famous statement that he made, where literally the night of a game, he sat there and right before opening tip, he stood up, he walked off, and he did not coach. And someone doing something like that today, or even that statement is viewed today as like this iconic, heroic move that he made to advocate for something that he believed in, that, or you could even sum it up in a word of progress. But at the time, he took a ton of heat for that. Took a ton of heat, a ton of bad press. And I just thought it's important to bring that up now, because now here we are in 2021, where the NCAA is looking for avenues and ways to make sure things are equitable amongst the landscape. Because he goes into, he being John Thompson in the book, he goes into some significant issues. There's a lot of them are even prevalent today, just as it pertains to the education system, and depending on location and economic, status kind of impacts the type of education and the type of learning environment you have, which is not always, the same as, from state to state, city to city, county to county, and things like that. And anyways, I think the point in me going on that whole tangent is to say, this decision that's being made, or that's being put before the NCAA committees now, to me goes back to a statement and a decision that John Thompson made back in the late 80s. And I just think it's important to acknowledge that. It is almost basketball season. We are going to be talking about, our blue bloods, and having all the college basketball coverage until March Madness as we, also get into the last half of football season. But I don't know, man. I just, that caught my attention. It took me back to John Thompson and the statement that he made. What are your thoughts?
I think it's really interesting, and it's, when you shot me the text and we didn't really message about it. I think I was doing something, but I kind of took some time to think about it. And so it's like twofold for me. One, I think it's a great idea to get rid of some of these things, but so I lean in on this side, because at the end of the day, being a college athlete, though I ran track, I was around a lot of my friends played basketball or football, which are the money drivers to your institution. And so it's interesting because there are guys that I know that have received the athletic scholarship, and we know they don't qualify, but the school's going to find a way to get them in. If you're good enough, they will find a way. There's very few institutions across the country that won't bend on that rules, which we know are like Duke, Stanford, Notre Dame,
Right.
Michigan, Wake Forest. Those are
SMU
like
is one of them,
SMU.
actually.
Yeah, they're very tight with that. So here's what I'll say about it. One, I think it's cool. I think it's great. Let's get rid of it. Because at the end of the day, that's the whole reason why we have NCAA clearinghouse now. Is because there's always a way that someone's going to try to find a way to get around it.
Mm-hmm.
What I care more about, though, is are we just doing this so we can get more kids on the team, or are we really going to look out for the best interest of the kid? So I love Thompson. You come in, this is the system. And I'm sure, I don't know him. I would have loved to have a conversation to see what that kind of looked like. Like, hey, come in. You're not going to play your first year, but we're going to get you academically right. We're going to get you right for life.
We're going to give you a chance.
We're going to give you a chance because, the truth of the matter is a lot of these kids, not a lot, let me not say that. I don't want to generalize it. But you're going to get some kids that come into these programs, man. This is all they got. This is all they have. If their whole goal to get out of their current situation is let me get a scholarship somewhere and hopefully I can make it to the league, right? But we also know this. If it's, 2% only go Division I? Out of that 2% that go Division I, there's an even smaller percentage of guys that are going to go to the league. So what are we going to do? Like, are we really going to make this about the student and not just the athlete? Because I think that's the only way that this really works. Because we make billions of dollars off of the backs of, I'm just going to say it, poor black kids. We make billions of dollars off of them. And then they leave college with nothing, And this is where, and I'm, because I can go on a huge tangent on this, but this is where my frustration comes with it, is you bring the kid in, you demonize him for not, let me say, academically maybe being able to hang, which isn't his fault because he probably comes, him or her, they come from a school system that doesn't care. So I'm from Detroit, Michigan. The Detroit public school system is terrible. It's terrible. If you just show up to the school, you're going to pass. Heck, you might not even have to show up. You're going to pass. It's just about keeping the funding coming into the school. The kids don't learn. They don't have what they need, all those other things. And so where I get frustrated is we love the kid for the talent, but then we don't take care, but then we demonize them for not being where you want them to be academically. And then we push the whole narrative of student athlete. But realistically, the only reason you love that kid is what they can do athletically. Because this is what most people don't know, Trey. When you sign a college scholarship, that is not a guaranteed 4 years.
Right.
That is let's not even say year. That is a semester to semester contract. I'm telling you what I know. I'm telling you what I know. I know what happens at the end of the semester and you walk in and you sit with your coach and they tell you to your face, hey, we're going to renew that scholarship. That is a semester to semester deal. So I think it's great. I think it's cool. Awesome. Let's give some more kids a chance because not all, just because you don't make the somebody really close to me, intelligent kid, has a learning disability. Doesn't do well on standardized tests, but flies out and kills his grades in school, right? The standardized test prevented him from having a Division I scholarship. So I like that we're changing this for that. But in the grand scheme of things, my thing is this. If you're going to do that, look after the kid when they come to your campus. Look after the kid. If you feel the kid isn't academically ready, then make sure you put that kid in a place to succeed. Because I've been blessed to have a relationship with a lot of people, and it's funny. I won't say the name because you'll know him, but I know a guy that played at a big time ACC program who was in a very hard degree plan, and the coach looked at him and said, "I don't pay you to come to school. I pay you to play football." So I just, when I saw it, I thought it was great. I see where we're trying to push to, but I'm just hoping this isn't something where it's smoke and mirrors and
Yeah.
we're not really looking after the college athlete
We're getting to the
because
root of the problem.
we're getting to the root of because most of it, and we're being honest, the minorities, let's just keep it 100. The most popular sports are ran by minorities, mainly black kids.
Mm.
Then let's set them up. Let's help them. When they get to they should leave your institution better. They should leave your institution like prepared for life. Because what a lot of athletes deal with, and I have a couple kids that I mentor now that are, when ball gets taken away from them, they don't know what else they're gonna do.
Right.
And so you put let's think about this. You put 12 to 15 years of your life into this, and then say you get injured, say you tear ACL, and this is what happens. We know this to be true. Once you're no longer viable for the program, most programs you're no use to them. Hey, figure it out. And so for me, love the rule. Let's just make sure we take care of the kid, though. That's always my thing. I'm a huge athlete advocate. Take care of the kid. And if we can do that, I like it.